The Knicks have finally hired a head coach. Kwab, clap, clap.
Clap. Just
Even if
means
you're
that
driving.
just means now the players don't have to coach the team. It's
Even
not.
if you're driving.
Do not clap if you're driving,
Rick
please.
Brunson will not coach this team, ladies and gentlemen. That's a W. That's a
Okay.
W. I was worried. I was freaking worried that's what we're gonna have. That was gonna happen. We
I
were gonna have
mean,
that on our hands.
I
But
think you were definitely worried because you kept mentioning after every episode, like,
I was
oh,
like, no,
maybe
no,
we
let's
have a
not.
coach.
No. Mike Brown is hired as a coach for the New York Knicks. He's a two-time coach of the year, a 454 and 304 career record, a 55% playoff win percentage, and he's a four-time NBA champion as an assistant with the Golden State Warriors. He turned around the Sacramento Kings, Kwab, then got fired for it.
I got fired for it. Yeah.
For me, out of all the options the Knicks had and all the people they interviewed, this is the guy I would have hired as well. This is the guy I would have chosen. Now, I'm not jumping for joy because I think he's a great coach or I think, he's the answer to all the problems. But, you fire Tibbs and going into this offseason, I don't think the Knicks really had a plan. They try to steal everyone's girl at the bar.
Wasn't working.
Wasn't working. Got rejected. And so then you kind of go to all reliables, which isn't a bad thing. Mike, to me, he's someone who I think has an interesting career. He has a good reputation within the league. Coach LeBron James, heavy defensive teams during that era. And then obviously Golden State, that dynasty, he's an assistant coach, but then he coaches the Kings and they're more known for their offense and ball movement and cutting and things of that nature. So he's proven that he can take whatever roster he has and make something out of it, which I think is the biggest plus because my whole thing with Tom Thibodeau was this guy's stubborn. This guy's not making any adjustments. This guy has an idea of what he wants to do every game, and whether it's working or not, he's just not going to change. And if he did change, it was too late. So I don't think we're going to have that problem with Mike Brown. I think a large part of this is getting Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns to work together offensively. I don't know how they're going to do it defensively, but you get Karl-Anthony Towns to spread the floor and to have this pick and roll Jalen Brunson and kind of be unstoppable on the end, which they were at the beginning of the season until teams figured out that you would just, put a big guy on Josh Hart and small guy on Karl-Anthony Towns. And then, that kind of derailed a lot of the Knicks' offensive prowess for the rest of the year, to be honest with you. Tibbs didn't really make any adjustments. So I'm anxious to see what he's going to do. I'm anxious to see what this Knicks offense is going to look like. I wonder if it's going to be as Jalen Brunson-centric as it's been. And defensively, how do you hide Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns? Because you're going to have to play them late in games. I mean, that's the problem here. And to me, the reason why I give Tibbs grace is because I don't know if a coach can fix that. To me, that's roster construction. And you're going to have to live with getting burned on that side of the floor a lot, especially in the playoffs when you get to the semifinals and when you get to the Eastern Conference Finals, if you get there. So, listen, all things considered, I'm cool with the hire. I'm not jumping for joy. I'm clapping while driving.
What clapping while driving? Stop clapping while you're driving. Stop clapping while you're driving. Yeah, like you made the point. Like, it felt like it didn't feel like, but was the case the Knicks made the firing of Tibbs without having a plan in mind, and it for weeks it was like, oh, the Knicks have reached out to so and so and they've been rejected. So it was like, who is gonna end up being the coach? And I mean, Mike Brown's a really good choice. He's known more as like an offensive coach now, which is kind of weird. I feel like back in the day he was known more as a defensive coach.
Yeah, with LeBron's
And
days.
yeah, so having him now in place for with the Knicks, the one thing that is very important is like, well, I don't know if the Knicks are done like signing free agents or putting together your roster, but having a coach in place is important because if you're a free agent, you want to go somewhere, you want to know who you're playing for, what
Right.
system you're going into. So that's a big factor. Um, yeah, I don't know what the offense and defense is going to look like. When Mike Brown was at Sacramento, the one thing they did, they played through Sabonis. Sabonis was like a hub, and but it still allowed Fox to still be just active and do his thing at the same time. So I don't know if it's going to be a similar thing with Cat and Brunson, and it's not going to be so much more go ahead take over Brunson offense late in games. So that could be the difference. Also, I feel like Mike Brown will hopefully play a deeper bench consistently, so
Yeah.
it won't just be the 6-7 man rotation. So that could factor into it too. Yeah, it's gonna be it should look different. you're you're hoping that this leads your team, your favorite team, back into the Eastern Conference Finals
Yeah.
because they're still a talented squad. Like if you look up and down the roster, even with the moves they've made in off season, starting getting Clarkson, getting Yabusele, uh, that helps. That helps the team. So you wonder what it's going to look like moving forward. But Mike Brown's a solid choice. Especially with the options that were out there, which wasn't that many. So hence the confusion of why do you fire Tibbs when there isn't like a clear cut option out there. So yeah, I think is a good choice. Do you have any like concerns right now after this move, or is it just like well, it is what it is now?
I mean, for me, it is what it is. At the end of the day, they have a flawed roster, in my opinion. I understand the move for Karl Anthony Towns, but I do think the way you win with Jalen Brunson is you get Jalen Brunson, you surround him with like people who could defend. I think the earlier version of this Knicks team with Julius Randle and Quentin Grimes and you know Isaiah Hartenstein. Like, and I understand you can't keep all those players. Dante DiVincenzo, players who could shoot, who can spread the floor, and who can defend. I think
Yeah,
that's the best version that you're going to get around Jalen Brunson because they're going to pick on him on the other end of the floor, and you can't have two people you could pick on the other end of the floor in modern day basketball. You just can't do it. You're not going to win. So for me, it's like, all right, well, to me, it's still a roster construction issue. You can get whoever you want, but if you have that on the other side of the floor, teams are just going to find a way to score on you almost every time down in crunch time. So I'm interested to see what he does defensively. Having Catton drop last year like drove me effing insane. And
terrible
yeah, and
schematic. Yeah,
to Brown's credit, I was watching some film like when he was coaching the Kings. Like Sabonis is the same thing as Cat, where it's like he can't guard anybody. It's like the same thing,
mm.
and he would have Sabonis be very aggressive, on the pick and rolls, like trapping and like hedging hard. I would rather that, and that's something I wish Tibbs would have done.
I mean,
Um, he did. He did. He started switching against the Celtics, but I mean, but then they go back to drop. But then
that's what I was gonna
also,
say. I was
people
gonna
were like,
say,
a
yeah,
lot of people like would blame Cat for it. Like you would
yeah,
see OG Anunoby, and some players get frustrated with Cat because I think sometimes Cat was supposed to be up and Cat was supposed to be putting more pressure, and he just
yeah,
wasn't. So is that a Tibbs thing? I don't know, or is that a Cat thing? We're gonna find out soon. But they weren't that like the most aggressive Tibbs would get would be trapping every once in a while,
yeah.
or getting higher on the drop or switching. They would never like really like
Commit to
yeah,
like
yeah.
away from
And
the
they never
drop
went
out
zone either. Like, I mean, I'm not
at
saying that
all. Yeah.
I want my team to go zone all the time, but we saw what the Denver Nuggets did this postseason.
Mm.
They zoned their way into Game 7 against the NBA champions.
Just a
You know what
just
I
a
mean?
different look. I mean, what I was gonna say is like during
Yeah,
like for example during the Pistons series, like the first game, they were Cat was higher up, was they were trapping, they were showing double, and it was like
yeah,
if you could tell it threw off the team because it was like, oh, they don't do this, and it
yeah.
worked. Then the next game they went away from it. I'm like,
Why?
it just worked.
Yeah,
It just worked completely. Like to just completely go away from it and not even show it. I was like, okay, well, I don't like you said. I don't know if it's a Tips thing or a cat thing, but yeah, maybe now they'll you gonna see different looks on defense.
yeah,
Yeah, which should help the team. Like you said, it's in modern day basketball. It's hard to hide two players who
yeah.
like when teams want to attack. So yeah, so I don't know what's gonna happen with that. Also, the prevailing rumor that's out there that the Knicks might want to trade for somebody.
Mikal
Some
Bridges is on the trade block like crazy. So is
yeah,
Cat, man. I
yeah,
think OG stays. I think there's a small chance Josh goes.
yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised if the Knicks are done here. But I think the duo of Cat and Jalen stay. And to me, that's the biggest problem. It's like
yeah,
the best thing about the Knicks and the worst thing about the Knicks. So how do you optimize the best part, which is offensively, they're two at the best at their position, right? And how do you minimize the damage on the other end?
yeah,
And to me, Tibbs couldn't figure out either answer, right? He couldn't maximize them on the offensive end. It was just kind of like if Cat was having a good game, he's taking the ball and do whatever. If Jalen's having a good game, he's taking the ball and do whatever. And typically the default was Jalen. They were never like it was never like cohesive. It was never like, oh now like the best part about any team, like we saw with the Pacers, it's like you gotta account for everybody on every possession. And for the Knicks, I just felt like you didn't have to do that. There were
yeah,
games where Mikal Bridges was just like invisible. And a
yeah,
lot of that I think has to do with game plan. There were games where OG Anunoby was invisible or Cat was invisible, and it was just like, oh, if we just stop Jalen, we're good. I don't want that to be my team. I want my favorite team to, at any given moment, anybody can give you buckets. And
Yeah.
so I hope he instills some type of offense like that.
Is there any free agent out there that you'd want them to sign that has like that's kind of floating around
Realistic?
like what happened?
A realistic free agent or
Yeah,
someone?
realistic. Not unrealistic. Obviously realistic. I'm not like, oh, that's
Nah,
yeah,
everyone's
realistic.
everyone's signed. Everybody he's signed.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's what's his name a free agent? Um, Malcolm Brogdon.
I guess Brogdon would be nice.
Mm,
He would have to probably sign for the vet minimum. The Knicks don't have money.
yeah.
That's the big problem here. They don't really have money to throw at anybody. So Brogdon, I think, would be great off the bench for sure.
Yeah.
But then you have Deuce, you have Clarkson. It's almost like, all right, now that part's crowded.
Yeah.
So I don't think Brogdon's a target here. I think the Knicks are pretty much done. I think like Landry might come back. We'll see. There's been talks about Ben Simmons, which like blew me out a little bit, but
Ben Simmons and Russell Westbrook. Those are the two names that have been out there. And I, you know what I mean, as your friend and as a Ben Simmons
victim.
yeah, I'm wishing that for you. So I really I'm I'm wishing that for you and Zach. I've been on Zach like, hey Zach, it's your turn now to just to
Well, we'll
look,
see.
Betty. If you get the hypothetical good Ben Simmons as a bench player,
Yeah,
it might not be that bad. So because he fit those type of needs you need, but we'll see. Like you
we'll see.
said.